Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do.
But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long-snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys, remember that guy. Remember that guy. Remember that guy. Remember that guy. Remember that guy.
They're just gonna remember some guys now.
The 1-1 Astoria is grounded to third. Ramon Arias from third. The Orioles have done it! Go crazy, Baltimore! You are the new champions of Remember That Guy, the show where we mine our memories for nuggets of nostalgia about peripheral players past and present. Hey there, folks, it's me, one of your hosts, James, and I am alone right now. Diaz and Xavier are not here. In fact, they do not know that I am recording this right now. This is a little surprise for everyone. For myself as well. I didn't know I was going to do this. We talked about this in the episode that we recorded the day of Clinchmas. And I did not feel at that time comfortable with talking about the Orioles, but it is something that Xavier and Diaz have very much wanted me to do over this time. And so I decided that today I was going to talk to you, dear listener, about the Orioles. I'm also going to, I think, kind of talk to myself about the Orioles, talk through the feelings that I have about this team right now. And I don't know how long this is going to go. If you have clicked on this, you do know how long this is going to go. Presumably it said so there in the app. And it will exclusively be about me talking about the Orioles. So feel free to exit at any moment. But before talking about the 2023 Orioles, I want to talk about a team I've talked about many times, which is the 2009 Orioles. And I want to talk specifically about the season finale that year. I remember it very vividly. This is start of junior year of high school, I guess. And we got a good crew out for this one. We got like 8 or 10 of us. Beautiful day playing Toronto. They've a couple Toronto fans in the section wearing polos. Just the tightest fucking polos you've ever seen in our entire lives. One of our good friends, Justice, said to these gentlemen at one point, "Hey, wear a tighter shirt," and that was within our vernacular for the rest of the time in high school. I mean, none of that means anything to any of you, but it just, I think, illustrates, to me at least, how much that game remained in my mind. And this is, I want to make clear, a fucking meaningless game. Could not be more meaningless. So the season finale against the Jays, they win. They do win. It's a walk-off. Michael Aubrey is the guy that scores the winning run, and is a walk-off bunt single by Jeff Fiorentino. It's pandemonium as we celebrate this incredibly feel-good win, the sweep of Toronto that finishes a 64-98 season. And neither of those two guys ever play another game in Major League Baseball after that win. I think this is the part of my life where I started to accept that I should not be looking for heroes at Camden Yards because I will not find any heroes there. This was, a season full of rookie call-ups and exciting debuts, and they still finished 34 fucking games below 500. I cannot stress how awful this team has been in my life, but I feel like for anyone to understand how I feel now, you have to really contextualize how atrocious they've been. So, since the turn of the millennium, the Orioles have as many 100-loss seasons as they do playoff trips. From 2000 to 2011, the best that they ever finished was third. They made third one time in 2004, where they managed to miraculously hold onto a winning record until the very end of May, when they were 24-23. Never had a winning record again the rest of that season. They are losers. The sports that you watch when you're young teach you how the world works. And I don't necessarily mean that they give you an accurate representation of how the world works, but they create for you your philosophy, your expectations on how the world works and what things are going to happen throughout your own life, just in society. Will good things happen to good people? No, not necessarily. Will good things happen to bad people? Yeah, probably. The Yankees have a lot of championships. And, this is what I came to learn. Like, my worldview is built around my experience watching the Orioles. I can be a kind of cynical sports fan. There's maybe a chicken and the egg conversation to be had there. Am I cynical because my sports teams suck shit, or am I cynical about my sports teams because I was just a depressed and pessimistic person in the first place? We can't necessarily partition all that out, but needless to say, the Orioles sucked. So all of us that were there that 2009 year, the last year that that big group was able to really get together for a season finale, you will, I think, forgive us for assuming, as the year 2012 rolled in, that we were seeing a mirage. Because you're telling me that this team that's got top 3 in the rotation of fucking Chris Tillman, Wei Chen, and Miguel Gonzalez, love them all very much, but you're telling me that team is going to have a winning season? They're still going to make the playoffs? It's absurd. It's unbelievable. And it was, to an extent, Orioles magic. We bandy that term about a lot here in the city of Baltimore, and 2012 is magical. And so were the next 4 years after that 5-year stretch from 2012 to 2016. Never forget that the Orioles won more games in the American League than any other team during that period. But full stop. No other team from 2012 to 2016 in the American League won more games than the Baltimore Orioles. But at the same time, it's easy to be a loser franchise when you are quite literally losing, when you're putting up 62 and 100 seasons every year. Sure, of course you're a loser franchise. It takes a special kind of loser to be the winningest team in the American League over a 5-year stretch and win a grand total of 0 games in the ALCS or further. Fuck, to only make the ALCS once. It beggars belief that was, as much as anything, a vindication of the cynicism that I've always had, that even in this brightest spot, which, to be clear, I enjoyed immensely, and I loved so deeply so many of those players and still think about them constantly. But I mean, going back to, us seeing how the world works, good things happening to good people or good things happening to bad people. The Red Sox finished last place in 3 out of 4 years, and they win a fucking championship in the other one. Meanwhile, we are just grinding out these good, if unspectacular teams, and they are giving us good but ultimately unspectacular results. And when that ends, I mean, when that's your highlight and that's over and you stare down the barrel of hoping that the next people to come in are going to not only be able to meet this, in many ways, ultimately dissatisfying end, but try and exceed it so it's not so dissatisfying, it's daunting to look at that and to really believe. And I did. I think I've said many times on this show, I firmly, deep in my heart, even now, do not believe that the Baltimore Orioles will ever win a championship. I simply don't think it's going to happen. And, as you get older, I think there comes a certain peace with accepting how much certain things suck. Whether that's accepting that maybe a movie or a TV show or a band that you liked wasn't as good as you thought they were when it was younger. You can still appreciate it. Just as, growing up with these teams shapes your worldview, eventually you need to, I don't know if adjust your worldview is necessarily the accurate description, but, your worldview is going to reflect what you're seeing. And I decided to reflect what I was seeing by accepting that the Orioles were just bad. This is what it was always going to be. I know it wasn't always what it was. I know there was a bright time once upon a time in the past, but I just couldn't relate to that the way that older folks in Baltimore who saw all that can. And so they were losers. And there is a peace in that. And that was the piece that I think I really sought comfort in the last couple of years. Because there's a rhythm that all sports provides. They are seasons, just like seasons of the year, whether you are somewhere where those are just wet and dry, whether you are somewhere where those are just hot and cold, whether you have here in the Mid-Atlantic all 4 beautiful, miserably disgusting seasons in equal measure. And there is a sense of time and a rhythm that in particular, I think a bad team provides. Because you don't think about a bad team in the offseason all that much. Even as someone that is admittedly fucking obsessed with the Orioles, I don't think about them in the offseason that much. I've got the Ravens, I've got the San Antonio Spurs. I guess Vancouver also exists. And so you can put them out of your mind until spring training rolls around. Maybe you get optimistic about a couple players. When the season comes, maybe they go on an early streak. The O's always do. And then it always peters out. And that's fine, because you know that for 6 months, every single night, you can hang out with the birds. And you also know when they're bad, it's going to end exactly 6 months after that. It'll end on the last day of the season. There is a definite endpoint. I think the fact that there's a definite endpoint, maybe that's where the peace was coming from. Because I know every year there will be, when the Orioles are bad, a last time that I can go to the yard and I can see them and I can be with them and I can be with the other fans around me. You get that sense of closure on a season. You get to know ahead of time that you're going to end it then, and so you get to try and end it on your own terms a little bit more. Some of those other seasons, I mean, the ways at the end. So in 2012, that group of friends from 2009, we were all in college by this point. We're all scattered to the winds. A few of us still in Maryland, but some of us down in Florida. I was in Philly. We're still big emailers at this time. I hadn't really had a cell phone before leaving high school, so all of us were like on email threads every night, just losing our mind off this team. That the 2012 team truly did not have any business being as good as it was. Pythagorean win record will show that. But it didn't matter. The 2012 Orioles made the fucking playoffs, and Joe Saunders went out there and outdueled Hugh Darvish. And then the ALDS also happened. But I love thinking back to how that ended and how all of us, I don't know, we didn't talk a lot at that point in the offseason. We all had other things going on. We all had new interests, new friends. We were all living in new places. And we got to hang out just a little bit longer in this email chain that year than we ever had before. And then 2014 rolls around. I finally kind of caught up with texting at this point. So we got our group chat. And again, they were an actually good team that year, I should clarify. I remember so vividly the night that they clinch. I'm working at this old job in Philadelphia, this old fake early 20th century ice cream parlor. I'm on my break when they beat those same Toronto Blue Jays. And I have to come back down and work 4 more hours of a shift. But I come down to the floor. I didn't even realize that I was crying until one of my coworkers pointed it out. Not a single other fucking Orioles fan there on staff, but they had known this was coming for weeks because I've been talking about it for weeks. And I got to share it with them. I got to share it with my friends. And then even by 2016, things start to be a little different in my relationship with the Orioles. And I think this is another thing like that rhythm that has made this difficult for me to process 2023 as it's happening. This I have also mentioned on this show before. I had a very dear friend, someone that I used to attend every opening day with in high school. We made a couple in college as well, Xander, and he passed away shortly after the 2015 season due to a undiagnosed congenital heart defect that just came out of nowhere. It was fucking horrible for me for a while, and it made that 2016 season really hard. Something else that made that 2016 season hard was that was another pretender team. That was not an actually good Orioles team. They got into the playoffs. Yeah, sure. Zach Britton was fucking incredible. Zach Britton should have won the Cy Young, for the record. Rick Porcello's 2016 Cy Young Award, one of the most fraudulent awards in baseball history. But that's beside the point. When that season ended, and it looked like it was the end of a certain era. I talked myself into 2017 a little bit before the year. We were pretty quickly disabused of that notion in early July. It became clear what we were about to stare down. There were parts of me that was almost excited that Xander didn't have to see how bad it got. And there were parts of me that found that peace that I've mentioned before in the losing, because it felt like returning to the team that I watched with Xander and all of our other friends for all those years. Like, they sucked. They sucked shit all over again, just like they always had. It was the same Orioles that we knew and loved. Xander had always been very bad at handling how bad our team was. I love this about him deeply. Like, by high school, even then, I was pretty chill when we went out to a game and they got their asses beat. Yeah, fuck it. We got to go back to school in the morning, dude. We can't dwell on this too long. He just took every single loss so hard. He just wanted so badly for the Orioles to be good, even more than I do. I mean, like I've said, in some ways I almost wish they wouldn't get good because of just the difficulty in embracing change sometimes. I thought about how Xander took losses in the lead up to this week because I was thinking about Brandon Hyde, who's been the manager of the O's now since 2019. He's had some pretty bad seasons from 2017 to 2021. Again, just to put into context, how fucking dreadful this Orioles franchise has been in our lifetimes. They went 253 and 455. That is a 357 win percentage. Over a full year, it's 58 wins. 4 straight seasons. Sorry, 5. 5 straight seasons of 58 win ball. It wears on you. My God, does it fucking wear on you. It wore on the team in 2017, clearly. It wore on everyone even more. 2018, got Buck Showalter kicked to the curb. And Brandon Hyde comes in, and it does not, I mean, technically it gets better. I think we set the franchise record for losses in 2018, at least before he came through. But, God, we've lost a shitload of games from there. And during the ramp up to them eventually clinching playoff spots and divisions and whatnot, Brandon Hyde has talked about how hard he took those losses. And, he's very frank. He's like, look, I didn't have the same amount of talent that a lot of other teams did, but that didn't make me feel any less for the guys that were in the dugout. Didn't make it any easier for him to stomach, going out there every day and genuinely, I believe, trying their best. Players don't tank. Teams and organizations can tank. Players don't fucking tank. The Orioles were not bad for lack of trying, but God, were they fucking bad. And then, I don't think this is a revolutionary thing to say. The best year of any core for any sport is the surprise year. And that was obviously for the Orioles last year. Out of nowhere, having lost 110 games the season before, Adley Rutschman comes up, and many other people come up, but let's oversimplify it for a moment. Adley Rutschman comes up, and the world changes. And including the series before that, now the Orioles just don't get swept anymore. Just doesn't happen, apparently. They've won, I think, 160-something games since he came up. They had their first winning season in quite some time. Now they've had, as of now, could climb even a little bit higher, their 7th best season all time. For a 70-year-old franchise. This is an old fucking team. Yeah, it's not one of the 19th century teams, but it's pretty fucking old. Apparently all it took was, just getting a generational switch-hitting catcher. And unfortunately, Matt Wieters didn't turn out to quite be that. But Adley Rutschman does seem to be that. And so the O's are what they are last year. And going back to Xander for a second, it's tough in some ways to see all of this success and to know that there are some people that didn't make it. I could have just as easily. I got hit by a fucking truck a few months ago. I could have killed me. I never would have seen this year. Some people that are with us every season will not be with us next season. And it feels cruel that time continues and these things that you use to mark time, like the seasons of the year or the seasons of your team, they don't ever slow down for anyone, be they members of the team, members of the organization, just fans. Nothing stops, nothing slows down. In many ways, it exists completely independently of all of us. I really like the bit that Jimmy Fallon says for a while, though, in Fever Pitch, when he's talking about how the team doesn't ever disappoint you. Like, yeah, they disappoint you. He's talking about the Red Sox. I'm talking about the Orioles. Both those franchises have been very disappointing at various times. But he's right that when they lose, they fucking show up the next day. So maybe that's a cruel indifference of time, that it just keeps going on without us. But at the same time, maybe that's what you need to try and find peace in now. Maybe that's what I need to try and find peace in now. Sorry, let me stop projecting onto you, dear listener. Maybe that's how I need to find peace, is knowing that it continues regardless of what people think and regardless of what people and fans even believe, myself included. So, 2022, it's incredible. It is objectively just fun and good. God, the unbearable lightness of potential versus the crushing weight of expectations. What a difference a year makes. And coming into this year, that's the other crazy thing, is people have no expectations for us. I was talking earlier this week with one of my friends, a member of that illustrious group from back in 2009, my dear friend Paul, and we were talking about how at the start of the year, Paul enjoys wagering some money on games, we'll say, from time to time, not infrequently. He likes to put some money on sporting events. He had approached me early in the year. He's like, what you think about the Orioles? What are we thinking? I'm a little bit more of a sicko with the team than he is. And I said, look, you smash the over on their over-under, something like 76.5. They're not going to get 7 games worth. Smash the over. Hell, smash over 500. I think they're a winning team this year. And if you're feeling spicy, go ahead and bet on the playoffs. Yeah, go crazy. You're lighting money on fire if you think they're going to win the division. Go for it. That's your poison. Have fun. But you're lighting that money on fire. And there were so many times this whole year, again, I'm a fucking cynical person, and I wish I wasn't. I hope no one adopts my mindset towards the sport. I hope if I ever have children that they are far healthier people about supporting these teams. Hell, I hope they don't support my teams, to be completely honest. I don't want them to get disappointed the way I always do. But there were so many opportunities for that stuff to play into my expectations of them letting us down. It felt like, even from the get-go, they're winning pretty early on, but there's something about the broken person that I am, where every single loss feels like this huge, momentous confirmation of all of the expectations I've had, all of the expectations that prognosticators like Fangraphs have had, this team's going to come crashing down any minute. And all of the wins, that's just background noise. We'll regress to the mean eventually. And I kept saying that, and saying that, and saying that, and perhaps almost to spite me, the team just kept fucking winning. And they tried to embarrass themselves some other ways, John Angelos tried to talk about eminent domaining an entire neighborhood around the stadium. He punished one of the beloved commentators, Kevin Brown, who I quoted there at the start of the show, to, ban him for simply stating that the Orioles have been bad in the past couple of years, and now we're not anymore. There are so many chances for what was shaping up to be a fun season to suddenly come crashing down. And then finally at the start of September, I feel like I kind of just woke up and finally accepted that something good might happen. That has kind of always been my approach to the Orioles, is I expect the worst possible thing to happen. And a lot of the times it has. It's backed me up pretty consistently a lot of the time. I could no longer ignore the fact that, this was probably going to end up being, by all objective accounts, a good season. And that was when the process of me trying to just accept that really started. I wasn't fighting it anymore. I was like, how am I gonna view this? What I started thinking about was how things started with Adley. I was at Adley's first game. And if you've been listening to RTG for a while, you heard me talk about that, because there was another phenomenal rookie debut that day along with Adley Rutschman. And that was my boy Jackson, this absolutely delightful 5-year-old whom I sat next to, him and his dad, during Adley's debut. It was Jackson's first ever Orioles game. I asked him who his favorite player was. He said Adley Rutschman because it's Adley's first Orioles game also. And so I decided that Jackson and I were best friends. And I was thinking about Jackson this last week. Because, man, Jackson, only knows glory. Jackson, much like anyone that's only watched the Orioles since Adley Rutschman came out, never seen the Orioles get swept. I've seen the Orioles lose 19 straight games really recently, and Jackson has never seen the Orioles even be swept. I've always had this cognitive dissonance with my mom, who grew up in Baltimore, saw all 3 of the World Series wins and the other 3 appearances. Always talks about how this summer where she graduated college and the Orioles won the World Series, I mean, it's the greatest summer of her life. Why wouldn't it be? And, she always, for that reason, had faith in the Orioles. She had seen them succeed, and I had not. And I didn't believe that they could. And I'm so happy to know that there is a chance for people like Jackson to grow up never having those same gross, pessimistic thoughts that I had. Now, okay, let's talk about the clinching itself for a moment, because I spent the whole week as we led into it of home games going every night in our countdown to Clinchmas and going with a different friend every night. Again, just trying to remember what it is about sports that we do in the first place. It's about connections with the people we watch with. It's about connections with the people that we watch. It's about reminding yourself when you go to a stadium on a Thursday night in September filled with 30,000 something people that there are other people in the world who want that thing that you want more than anything else just as much as you do. And you are all in it together. You are all stressing out together. And it's a really special experience. And it was very special to be in there. And I wanted to savor that because going into this, I think the last thing, there are 3 points that I think made it hard for me to really own into the season. One is missing the rhythm of a shitty team. One is the hurt that I feel that not everyone who deserves to get to see this team is getting to see it. And then the way that people have talked about this team all year, because there's a strong young core. Adley, Gunnar, G-Rod, DL Hall, Jordan Westberg, Heston Kierstad. I could keep fucking going. What that has led to is a lot of people talking about how exciting this beginning of an era for the Orioles is. This window is opening. I saw Lamar Jackson's unanimous MVP season. I still believe that that was the greatest football season anyone's ever authored, all time. Sorry, the next time someone rushes for 1,000 yards, leads the league in yards per carry, and leads the league in passing touchdowns, I'll reevaluate that. But for right now, Lamar Jackson has the greatest football season of all time. And he lost his only playoff game that year. And they've won 1 since then. And I love Lamar Jackson. He's so much fun to watch. I'm so happy he was with the Ravens. I have no complaints whatsoever about the Lamar Jackson era. But it also illustrates the thing that I try to make a positive spin out of my belief that the Orioles will never win a World Series, which is that sports is not about championships. Watching sports for championships is the dumbest thing you can do to yourself, because a core is going to get 1 fucking shot. Maybe a dynasty gets a couple, but like most sports cores, most sports teams where you put people together, spend these years developing them, spend these years drafting them, you go out and get your free agents, you pray and hope and wish for 1 year where all of the injury luck lines up just right, all the matchups are perfect, you get all the breaks that you need, you get 1 shot. I saw that game. I saw the Canucks make the Stanley Cup Finals in 2011. I saw the 2014 Orioles, the only time that I've ever even remotely entertained the idea that maybe I was wrong about a title. And those teams didn't get second shots. Sometimes you do. Sometimes the Spurs follow up 2013 with 2014. Sometimes, the Chiefs, like 3 and 4 years. Again, some dynasties persist, but cores get 1 shot. And there was this presumption that it felt like everyone had about this Orioles franchise, where everything's going to be coming up roses now. No one has ever turned things around as quickly as this team. It is legitimately unprecedented for any team in the history of organized professional baseball in North America to go from 100 losses to 100 wins in 2 seasons or fewer. It never happened. And we may never see it again. This is unprecedented shit, and that is why it's fucking wild to me that people are starting to make all of these again, presumptions about what's going to happen and how much fun the next couple of years are going to be. And I think hearing all of these people talk about my team that I've been so down on for so long, with this sureness about how those dog days are over, bright and sunny mornings ahead, and I just couldn't get with it. I couldn't get with the thought that those are over. And that made it really tough to appreciate what this is, because fuck, man, what if this is it? And that's not me saying like, what if this is their only shot at the title? Again, the playoffs is a tournament where you have to be lucky. You simply have to be lucky. You also, it helps to be good. Most teams that win the tournament are also good, but you have to be lucky. Whereas in order to win a division, then you have to be fucking good. So that's really what I had to get down with. I had to look at this year and stop thinking about what other people were saying and worrying about what luck is going to shake out, because it might shake out well. They might get swept they won't get swept in the first round. They might get swept in the second round. And that's fine. They proved for a full year. They proved me wrong, proved a lot of other people wrong. And they proved that they were a good team rather than a lucky team. I doubt that I will ever see them win 100 games again. I'd love to be wrong. And there was finally a moment where I was able to just kind of flip a switch, almost, it felt like, and just be happy that this season happened. You know, I didn't want this one shot that we get, if this is indeed our one shot, to just be like, oh yeah, they made a wild card game. It was fun. They lost and we moved on. And then they never really quite hit those heights. Like, in 10, 20, 30 years, however long the earth still exists, 30 years for the earth existing. I'm a very cynical person. I won't forget last night. I won't stop enjoying last night if they lose in the ALDS, in the ALCS, in the World Series. I won't lose track of how special last night was if they lose the next 10 seasons. Fuck it. I've seen them lose 15 years in a row. Whatever. They suck again. They truly didn't suck for a little bit, and that's worth something. So the game last night where they did it was very narratively special. And there's a few different reasons for that. You can actually look at the game itself and the way that the people who were most integral when it came to the teams, the starting pitcher, Dean Kramer, really the only thing that we got out of the Manny Machado trade when the teardown truly began in earnest in 2018. And before last year, it kind of looked like we got nothing out of that. And then Dean Kramer came alive a little bit and has had another great follow-up to that. Team Israel legend. We don't need to talk about that part too much. But Dean Kramer, absolutely lights out for 5 1/3. The solo shot that was the only run of the game for most of it was Anthony Santander. Venezuelan Rule 5 pick, had come to the team even before the teardown started, played through all of these terrible years, wasn't a really good defender early on, so largely got to play because of how terrible we were all through those years. Got that opportunity for that reason. Many things in common with his compatriot, Jose Altuve. And then you think about the guy that delivered the other RBI later on, Heston Kierstad. He was this, he was picked during a COVID year. It was a bizarre draft. And then he has an undiagnosed congenital heart defect that might end his career in baseball before it ever began. And Heston Kierstad just becomes this ghost for a couple of years before all of a sudden getting to finally play a little bit at the end of last year and truly play in earnest professional ball this year and just shoot up in the majors by September. Not by September, in September. He delivers that double. The guy that scores, Adam Frazier, we have only ever signed these one-year veterans for any free agent deals. They've all largely been just fucking slapdick dudes. Rougned Odor, Maikel Franco, Freddie Galvis. They've been fun. Adam Frazier's been fun too. I said a lot of shit about Adam Frazier when we signed him. I will look back fondly on Adam Frazier's time. And, this pinch hitter, he comes in, he gets on base. And then it's closed out by yet another Rule 5 draft. Tyler Wells, a guy who really represented, I think, a lot of my biggest fears about this season crumbling down when I was waiting for that other shoe to drop. Another very good pitcher through the full first half of the season. Maybe could have been an all-star if you were looking for more Orioles pitchers. And then just runs out of gas in that second half, starts getting absolutely lit the fuck up in a few consecutive starts, gets sent down to AA initially, not even AAA. But now, just to keep him useful on the roster, he's been temporarily converted into a reliever. Presumably he gets built back out next year. And here he comes in to close inarguably the biggest game in my lifetime for the Orioles. So that was all big. But I got to the game late. And the thing that I am going to remember more than anything, I'm there with my friend, a Red Sox fan, but one who's, from the area, and he's happy to be a part of Clinchmas this evening. He's a good sport about it all. We get there late, hang around the flag court for a little bit. We go up to our seats, beers in hand, sit down. And dear listener, I swear to God, that the second I look up from my phone in those seats and I look to the Jumbotron, it's panning through the audience. I think we're mid-fourth inning right now. And lo and behold, I see a woman I know named Shannon on that screen. And I know Shannon because Shannon is my late buddy Xander's mom. Not kept as good of a touch as I'd like to because it's tough, I'm sure, for them, even more so than it is for me. And for so many years in my life, I have expected the worst from my teams because that way, if things go badly, at least I was right. And all day, I decided, fuck it, man, it's Clinchmas. Let's feel that Clinchmas spirit. It's beginning to feel a lot like Clinchmas. Simply having a wonderful Clinchmas time. My cousin and I are texting ourselves these all day. We think we're very funny. I had truly, in my heart of hearts, I don't know if I convinced myself of this before this day. I definitely said positive things about the Orioles prior to this day, but I don't know if I had deep down allowed myself to buy in to even any one night. Oh yeah, they're winning tonight. They're winning tonight. I had told myself all day they're winning tonight. And I got to that ballpark and I saw Shannon up on the screen, and how the fuck could we not win after that? After the top of the eighth, God, what a fucking shutdown inning by Yinyer Cano and Cianel Perez. But after the top of the eighth, we head back down. I wanted to be on the ground floor when it happened. Just wanted to be with the people. And we go out to the flag court with all the statues. The Brooks Robinson one there is, of course, currently a memorial where there's a line where you can get behind some stanchions to take a selfie with the Brooks Robinson memorial. It's a little weird, but I mean, that's just the time we live in. Besides, anyone who knows that the outside Brooks Robinson Memorial by Pickles Pub is the one that fans paid for, although we also paid for everything in Camden Yards because John Angelos is cheap. I'm sorry, I'm getting beside myself. That's not important. We're talking about good things. We're talking about good, positive things right now. I did not expect this to be a life-changing moment. And it wasn't, to be clear. Like, obviously, this is not a life-changing moment when the final out was recorded. But boy, it was life-affirming in a way that I didn't really anticipate and was very pleasantly surprised by. At one point, I was going to wrap this up with a thanks to just many of the players that have seen us through this, both the shitty years before that mid-aughts run, that 2010s run itself, and then all the years in between that and what the team is now, and also all the guys on the team now. I mean, I want to thank every Oriole. So we have the bit on this show where anyone who's played for one of our teams is a legend. And yeah, we're playing it up a little bit because we're trying to be entertaining on this, but if you play for one of my teams, I want to make it clear, the moment you put that jersey on, you have acquired legend status. You can only lose legend status from that point on. People if we're talking about Orioles, Kurt Schilling and Aubrey Huff, those guys have lost legend status. But anyone that plays, you've got it. You're starting with it. You are a legend to me. Anyone who tries to make me as an Orioles fan feel better by playing well for the Orioles is legendary as hell. So I was going to go through that long list. Our good friend Connor Newcomb over at Locked On Orioles, he sprinkled that in enough into his episode of that today that I think it would be a little redundant for me to do that. So I will just recommend that you check out the Friday, September 29th episode of Locked On Orioles. He also talks a lot about making sure that we appreciate this in the moment. And I want to make sure that I do that too. And I want to appreciate all the people that came with me to games this year. My parents, my wife, my sister, my cousin, a bunch of friends like Paul and Brandon and Steven, who were all there with me this past week for the countdown to Clinchmas. All of the friends from our fantasy leagues, Diaz and Xavier among them, that have been out there with me to games this year. I fucking love the Orioles so much. And to get to enjoy it with so many people that I also love so much has been so special. And so I just want to thank them. I want to thank producer Craig and all of the coders behind him. I want to thank Sports Reference for all of my fancy numbers. I want to thank musical director Don Ham for our lovely theme music. I want to thank Diaz and Xavier for hopefully not being mad when they realized that I recorded an entire, going on kind of long episode without them at this point. And most of all, dear listener, I want to thank you for putting up with a host who insisted for much of this season on being miserable about what is inarguably one of the greatest seasons in their franchise's history. Thank you for listening also to me just talk about this now and just feel in front of you performatively. And I think that's all I have to say. So I've been James, and as fans of the 1989 Orioles roster might say, if they were also fans of this show, Gyna.
Can you believe where we are today? You see, it just don't matter what no experts say. 'Cause baby, we're in this thing to stay. Now the O's are going on.